This is episode 12 of Pucks, Putts, and Properties. And I'd like to say, as always, I'm here with my co-host, Danny Taylor, but he's replaced by our Masters gnome here. This is going to be a golf-heavy podcast, as I've got an amazing guest on. And there's only one way to start this Masters recap, and that's with a hello, friends. And I'd like to introduce my guest. And the only other way to do that is please. Scott MacLeod now driving. Thanks for joining the podcast, Scott.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate you having me. And thanks, Noam. I appreciate you being here as well.
So just give us a brief introduction as to who you are and how you've been involved in golf in the Kingston and Eastern Ontario area for so many years now.
How many hours do you have?
Off you go.
Yeah, I'm currently the associate publisher at Flagstick Magazine, flagstick.com. I'm also a PGA of Canada Class A professional. I don't know where to start with being involved. I mean, been doing a lot of different things for a lot of years. Retail side of things, golf coach side of things, involved with lots of committees with golf associations and so on. But, primarily in a media role for the last almost 30 years, doing a lot of work with that, not only in a regional level, but national level as well, involved with the Golf Journalists Association of Canada. So that's the big picture more than anything, but I'm sure we'll scrape into a few more things as we get going.
For sure. And I guess as a past golf professional myself and someone who's been in the industry in this area for a while now, transferred over to real estate, obviously. But I guess I just want to thank you for everything that you've done for the golf community the last, I don't know, how many years is it?
Flagstick started in 96. So Jeff Botter founded it in 96. I started writing with him in 96, and then I came on full-time with him as the editor in 2000. So 25 plus years full-time there. And so it's quite some time, that's for sure. But thank you for that. I mean, I think one of the greatest things about golf is that, as you know, it's a community, and that community only gets better if people don't just think about themselves. They try to give back as much as they can. So I've always thought of it that way. And if there's anything I can do to help someone else in the industry, I'm always happy to do that.
Yeah, amazing. Obviously, I've brought you on to recap the Masters, which concluded on Sunday. And amazingly, with Rory McIlroy finally achieving the career Grand Slam, now becoming one of only 6 players in history to achieve the modern day Grand Slam. But what a roller coaster. Give us a quick recap of everything. Rory makes it interesting, right? So just break it down for us a little bit.
Yeah, I think roller coaster is definitely the word. Even he said, it was a wild ride, and that went right from the start. I think on Sunday, after 2 great days on Friday and Saturday, we had played so well. He goes into that final round up 2 on Bryson DeChambeau. We all have sort of expectations. We're like, all right, here's the crowning achievement. How's it going to play out? And as always, most people will be in their heads that, oh, okay, this is going to be a nice little walk to the finish line. But golf's not like that, of course. So, he double bogeys that first hole, goes into a tie with Bryson. Bryson birdies 2, and next thing you know, he's 1 down, and we're off to the races on a turbulent ride of emotions that lasted the entire day. And I think, in the end, I think most people got the ending that they wanted, but they certainly didn't hope for the emotions that brought them there during that day, because man, there was a bit of everything in there, and I think it brought a lot of people off their couches, running around with nervous energy. I think the text chats everybody was going on were probably pretty wild, and people just didn't know what was going to happen. Whether at one point they were thinking, oh, okay, Rory's got this, and then they're like, he hasn't got this, and oh, Rory, you're a dummy, and to go to a playoff and then end up birdieing the playoff hole and to beat out Justin Rose, and you saw the emotions there, and I think it was just an incredible finish.
Yeah, and maybe really added to Rory's emotions at the end as he collapsed to his knees, finally having achieved, a lifelong dream, things you dream about as a kid. Winning your Masters to complete the Grand Slam. I don't even know if you could ever dream that far ahead, but that, all those, he should have had this Masters championship years ago, and then all that emotions flooding out. So this roller coaster ride probably added to that at the end. But a couple highlights that I want to go through is that opening double bogey. He said it actually calmed him, which I
did.
Interesting psychology there to make a double bogey and feel more calm. I guess you go back into, am I going to play conservative or play aggressive? You're just playing your own game at that point, not thinking it through super hard after you're even with Bryson DeChambeau, right?
Yeah, I guess it kind of wakes you up a little bit, but he said specifically, he thought of John Rahm, who had done the same thing and gone on to win a couple of years ago, and knowing that pathway has already been done, that it's possible that just because you made the double bogey doesn't mean you're going to lose it. That gave him the calm, had a couple of nice birdies in the next few holes. I'm sure there were some other moments that didn't feel quite as calm, but as he said, I think in some ways too, it's a lot more comfortable to be the chaser than the leader in a lot of times. So, putting himself in that position kind of back against the wall a little bit, even just being one back after 2 holes, just, it sort of wakes you up and realize, okay, I've got nothing to lose. This is mine. If I want it, I'm just going to have to go and just, fight through this. And God, did he ever have to fight through it?
Yeah. And one of the, most amazing shots I thought of the day was on 7 when he pulled that drive into the trees left and hit that high cut out of the trees. You're thinking, boy, if he misses this, he's looking at a double bogey in a hurry. And he actually should have probably made birdie there after that shot. It was an incredible shot.
It really was. And, he said he struggled 7, 14, and 17. Those holes all kind of head in the same direction. They sort of have the similar shape off the tee. And he said he struggled with those all week. And, we did see that, he had to have a few Houdini shots on all those holes throughout the week. But yeah, I mean, it was an incredible amount of risk to go up there, and him, seeing that. I think he was obviously happy with making a 4 and getting out of there. It would have been even more fairy tale had he made that. But, you think about even, a couple holes before on 5 when he's in the woods to the right and he's got that, the tower in between. He's got to hit that shot out of the woods and to scrape out a 4 there. So, he said he had some breaks go his way. And, we saw that a little bit later too on holes like 11, for an example. And, sometimes that's part of it and that you need it. Sometimes you feel they go against you, but obviously for him this week, they rolled into his favors as much as they possibly could.
And then he goes on to make back-to-back birdies on 9 and 10. And here we are taking a breath, thinking everything's okay again. And then we get that wedge shot out of nowhere on 13 and he makes a double bogey. Like this is what we're talking about when we mean a roller coaster.
Yeah, I mean, you lay up on 13 specifically, it's a par 5 and you're trying to eliminate that creek, eliminating the trouble in front of the green as much as possible. So, he hits a beautiful 3-wood off that tee, lays it up down there, doesn't have, has a short wedge. And as he said, he knew that, he was pulling his wedges kind of a little bit off that lie that he was going to be on, but he certainly wasn't aiming towards the creek and just mishit it. And, there was gas, I'm sure, in millions of households around the world of people going, what are you doing? And you're thinking this is his undoing moment, especially when it's coming on the back 9. When we see a mistake on the front 9, we know he's got time to kind of make up for it. But when all of a sudden you get to those holes like 13, which, everybody would think is a birdie hole. If we look at it all time, it's averaged under par from 1942 all the way through 2024. It's a hole that you have to take advantage of. And for you to all of a sudden, lose basically 2.5 strokes to the field at a critical moment. I mean, you can't even imagine what he's going through, let alone, what the spectators were going through.
And then to add on to it, a bogey on 14. But then here he comes roaring back on 15 with an unreal shot where he hooked it around the trees to, what was it, like 5 feet or something? Yeah.
I mean, he ended up, not making that putt, but, he was behind the trees on the left side. He said it actually helped him that, this is conversations from his press conference afterwards. Bryson went first, dumped it 25 yards short in the water. Rory actually had an 8-iron at first. So, he had 207, I believe, for that shot. Had an 8-iron in hand at first. knew he could blow it out to the right, put it in the bunker, or get the right part of the green. That was perfectly fine. He could have a good chance at least to two putt from there. But yeah, definitely a heroic shot. Dropped down to the 7, hit this amazing hook shot, towering again, kind of following up on the great shot that he'd hit the day before and made the eagle. And it definitely was one of those, the pivotal moments from a scoring wise, where he all of a sudden righted the ship after, having made these bogeys in the prior holes. So that sort of set the scene. But, as we know in golf, you don't get to just dictate the story as well, because Justin Rose at the same time was making a charge there as well. And so, what Rory was doing was certainly necessary, and that set up kind of what we saw on 16.
That approach shot, amazing approach shot that he hit on 17. He was bagging for it to fly when it was in the air. Do you think he mishit it a little bit, or do you think he just had max yardage on that shot for?
I think he just probably felt he mishit it. It's quite possible that he caught it a little bit high up in the face, and when you do that, it doesn't feel very good at all. But the one advantage of doing that is that it takes spin off the shot, so it will tend to launch a little bit higher and carry a little bit more. So when he looked up and it probably didn't feel good, was probably launching on a higher window than he expected, but because it had a low enough spin, it got to where it was going to go. So again, just a wild turn of events in that particular point. And back to 16 as well. I mean, him having the success on that par 3 with that right hole location, which is not the traditional Sunday location, but they used it because of it's been 50 years since Nicklaus won in 75, and that was the whole location that they used then. He and Bryson both hit fantastic shots in there, so that was a kind of a big separator there as well. So and then easing him into what happened on 17.
It sure changed 16 on Sunday, though. Usually we're sitting on the couch watching this thinking, okay, someone's going to make a hole-in-one here. And that really wasn't the case with that pin location this year.
No, it wasn't. And, some people, some people rebuffed it. I had a few friends, who knew about where the hole locations were. They'd seen the pin sheet early in the day and, messaged and said, oh, I hate this or whatever. But, on the other side of it, when we were doing our podcast recording yesterday for this week, the Flagstick podcast, Jeff Water, mentioned the one thing that was good about it was the fact that you had to hit a good shot. Whereas the back left pin, you can hit a poor shot over to the right. And because the pin is down in the bowl, that poor shot still gets rewarded because it rolls down near the hole. So while we might not see, those possibility of those hole-in-ones and a lot of shots coming down close, it was better from a competition standpoint so that players weren't getting rewarded for poor shots. You had to hit a quality shot in there. So I certainly had an appreciation for it, and I think Rory did too.
Yeah, and of course, in Rory fashion, he hits a perfect drive down the middle on 18 and then dumps it in the bunker.
that was the one that shocked me maybe the most beyond the one on 13 because he had hit such a great drive up there almost past the last bunker on the left, and you've only got 125 left in, and guys I was with, some just watching it, they're like, man, 125, you just feel like you could throw the ball on the green from there, and you see it take off and it goes to the right, and you're like, okay, that's sort of where it's supposed to go. That's the safe side with the pin down on the bottom left, and you hit it up there and it'll spin back and get down to the same level, and you got a 20-footer and you two putt and you walk away with your green jacket. But as you said, in Rory fashion, off into the bunker. Again, we're pulling our hair out, whatever we've got left at this point from the day. Heart rate monitors all over the place are probably blowing up. There's probably people that have to replace their Apple Watches yesterday morning for sure. And that fails to get it up and down, and next thing you know, boom, we're going to a playoff. Yeah,
that camera angle for those approach shots on 18, the line does have to be further left than it really looks on that camera angle. Did you feel that too?
It was interesting because they were using some slightly different camera angles this year in a good way. And I thought a lot of them were really great. It added to the cinematography. But the issue is that, like you said, because the angles where they're at, it sort of disguises kind of what is actually happening. It sort of messes things up. Cameras definitely lie in a little bit of way. So it definitely made it look different than probably it actually was in person. And, you know, that's obviously Augusta's MO. If you get to go to Augusta, you realize, okay, this looks a lot different than maybe what I see on TV. You know, they do a great representation of, they're doing a better and better one every year because they've got technology to do it, but there's still no substitute for being on those grounds and actually seeing, you know, kind of how those shots are played and what the players are having to face.
Yeah, so that's we really focused in on Rory there, but I do want to talk about some of the other players. Obviously, an amazing tournament for Justin Rose. I don't think many people would have had him picked at the start of the week, and then comes out blazing with an opening round 65. I made the mistake of saying to a few too many people that there's no way he's going to stick around for Sunday, and I'll admit I was wrong.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine because, I mean, you think of the golf course now and what the test is, and, you know, it's gotten harder and harder every year. And at over 7,500 yards long, you know, you start to think, okay, this starts to eliminate some players. And, you know, when you think of a guy like Justin Rose, you know, mid 40s, you know, not that you still can't hit it for far enough at that point, but, you know, he's got the other aspects of his game. And it was obvious that, you know, also at that age, you know, what do you got to lose? So, you know, you're just going to go out and fire at things. You're going to play smart, but you also have a lot of experience. And I think that played into him having those 10 birdies kind of in the final round of a, you know, a don't care attitude. It's remarkable when you think of it, though. I saw a stat. Justin Ray had posted it, who does a lot of statistics for the tour and a couple different operations. But he said that, you know, if Justin Rose wins, will be the oldest European major tour winner or major winner since Old Tom Morris in 1867. So we start to think about that as far as his age and the probability of winning that. You know, it was an incredible run for sure. And like you said, I don't think a lot of people would have been upset, but I think a lot of people would have been or were surprised that, you know, he was still in there. And it obviously required a Herculean effort to be able to be in there on Sunday. So, but still good to see.
So Rory's got a stranglehold on Player of the Year. Here we are in April, and he's got the Players and the Masters title. But who would we have thought that would have been that this year is Scottie Scheffler. And I would call his Masters as good as it was for the average tour player. He's probably feeling like that was mediocre for Scottie Scheffler.
Well, if you won that championship twice in the last 4 years, or 3 years, I guess, prior to that, and you've been on such a run, a dominant run last year. Now, since the injury, he had an injury at Christmas time. People are not aware he was trying to roll some ravioli or cut some ravioli, ended up breaking a glass, cut his hand, had to have surgery. Hasn't quite been 100% the same kind of since then. Now, you're not saying that's the cause of it for sure. He's been in contention in a couple of events. He played well at the Houston Open, but he hasn't been the Scottie that he was last year. And in fact, if you look at the world ranking points, Rory has gained almost 3 times as much world ranking points this year as Scottie has. And as a result, Rory is closing the gap on that world ranking, is whatever you take from that. But for Rory to win at Pebble Beach and to win the Players, winning the Players and the Masters in the same year, only 2 other players have done it. Scottie and Tiger. So I mean, that's significant as it is. And then now we look forward to come May, we're heading to Quail Hollow, where Rory's had an amazing level of success over the years. So our conversation now changes, and I thought it was funny. One of the best moments was when he came into the media room on Sunday, and they wanted him to kind of make a statement, and he said, I'm going to start with a question, like, what do we talk about now? Obviously addressing the media, because in the media it's been 11 years since he last won a major, so there's a lot of discussion kind of about that. It's been 14 years since he had that collapse in 2011 at the Masters. So now he's got that monkey off his back. He said he doesn't feel now that burden. It's pretty exciting to think ahead what could happen. U.S. Open in Oakmont, Open Championship at Royal Portrush, not far from where he grew up. There's a whole lot of scenarios that we can start to speculate about now. And because he's on this run and got this confidence and weight off his shoulders, hard to know what the year is going to hold for him. But I'm sure it's, he's off to an incredible start.
Do you think he'll be holding onto the putter a little less tightly as he's closing rounds now, and we'll start to see those fall a little bit easier now that he's maybe feeling some relief?
I don't know if that changes that too much. I mean, if you look at his putting throughout this tournament, I mean, his strokes gained were fine. I mean, he was putting fine. I think it was just situational that we've seen those particular ones. And, that final putt on 18 at Pinehurst last year is as much as people look at that and go, man, he should have made that, the ones on 16 and 18. The one on 16, probably more. 18, that's a difficult putt. I think it's overblown a little bit. I mean, if you look at his week, obviously he made a lot of putts. He made some critical putts. He made some putts that were, certainly a lot of pressure on them, and he still made those. I think it's just been certain at the moments. Made the short one, missed the short one in regulation on 18, made the next one in the playoff. I think it's just overall confidence. I mean, it's like anything, kind of when you're working with players, this, having worked as a PGA professional, if you're working and coaching someone, when they're confident, whether their technical skills are perfect or not, it's the confidence, it's that belief that makes a big, big difference. It's the doubt that obviously hurts athletes. So it can't be anything but good, I think, for his putting.
Yeah, and another surprising contender was Patrick Reed. I can't remember the last time he was in contention.
Gee, I don't know. Maybe look above your head.
Well, so we were talking before we went on air. He's like, 2018 Masters. I was like, yeah.
Don't see many people wearing that hat.
Yeah, well, Masters theme podcast. I didn't buy hats when I was at Augusta last year, so it's still the only hats that I have is the 18. I obviously got some other swag over here.
Sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, I feel like that kind of came out of nowhere that Patrick Reed was in contention.
Yeah, it did. And again, I think we talked about Justin Rose and experience, though he hasn't won at the Masters, he's played in a lot of Masters. So for somebody like Patrick Reed, who has won the Masters, it requires a lot of knowledge to play this golf course. Even Rory said, 17 times playing the tournament, it takes a lot to get used to the nuances and hole locations and how you should play stuff, and just to eliminate kind of fine mistakes, because it's either a death by 1,000 cuts or success by 1,000 cuts when it comes to a golf course like this. So for Patrick Reed, I mean, knowing that you've won there before, obviously he, coming in, he dunked a full length shot on a par 4. That obviously helps, makes it a little bit different as far as the scoring, but for any of the players, you've got to count experience in there. So even to see somebody like Ludwig Oberg, I mean, having top 10s in his first 2 Masters is sort of unprecedented. It's really hard to do, because again, the difficulty and the challenge of this golf course is so magnified over everything else that they face. The approaches are a lot more critical. They're a lot harder to, hit precisely to where you need to go. The putts are that much more dramatic and faster. It's so much easier to make mistakes. So for a guy like Patrick Reed, again, you have that in your pocket, whether you've been playing a lot of golf or not a lot of golf, just that experience alone will instill a fair bit of confidence, and at least give you a solid game plan, because you've had a game plan that's succeeded before. So it's not like you're looking for the recipe while you're trying to make the cookies. You've got the recipe, you know how to make the cookies. So that obviously will give you a lot of confidence.
You did mention a player just there that I also wanted to talk about, and I'm really hot on this guy, is Ludwig Oberg. Yeah. I think he's going to be a major champion soon enough. I saw him last year down at Augusta, and it was like, this guy kind of came out of nowhere for me. It was on other people's radar, but I'm like, who is this guy? He's a stud. So good. So good.
Yeah. I mean, anybody who'd followed during his college career at Texas Tech, they, kind of have an indication of what he was like. But he's sort of that guy that, probably the first one we've seen since Tiger that If you put together a golf robot with all the best parts of the game, from skills in different areas of driving, putting, approaches, or whatever, to the mental skills as well. You see how calm he is, how confident he is. He doesn't seem to get rattled, and he's got all the tools, the physical tools as well in the modern game, to really be successful long term. So yeah, would not be surprised to see him keep contending in majors, win multiple majors, and obviously have a great level of success on the PGA Tour. He's definitely got the tools, and every player out there will tell you that.
So one of the side storylines is Rory and Bryson. They have been on total opposites ends of the golf spectrum. Whether it's Bryson with YouTube, Live Golf, and then Rory sort of carrying the putting on his PGA Tour hat and representing the tour as strong as he can. They've been on opposite sides. I love both of these players for different reasons.
Yep.
I think Bryson's YouTube stuff is brilliant. And when he said he was leaving for Live, he said promoting the game, and a lot of the guys were just saying that. And I actually think he's done it. Like he's gone off in a different direction, but I actually do believe he is promoting the game in a different way than he otherwise would have continued to promote it had he stayed on the PGA Tour. Now, a lot of the guys that moved over to Live were strictly moving over for the money. Not saying that wasn't the reason Bryson moved over, sure, but he actually did back it up in promoting the game in new ways. So I like that about Bryson. Rory's my guy. He's we've all been rooting for Rory to eventually do this, but they're not on the same page.
No.
And Bryson, after his round in an interview, said that Rory didn't say a word to him all day. So this was kind of a fun story to line to follow here also. And with Bryson winning the US Open last year with Rory's collapse. So there is a true rivalry here, which is fun in any sport to follow.
Yeah, I think that element is always important, to have a couple of players that are kind of battling back and forth, and whatever you think about them. I think you're right on Bryson. He's obviously had the biggest transformation as far as public persona in golf. I don't think anyone can argue that. If you go back 3-4 years, he might have been one of the more hated players, just for, maybe some immature actions, some different things he would say or so forth. But, he obviously realized that maybe he needed to change some things a bit. Maybe he didn't change things that much. Maybe that's just a perception. I think the hardest part for a lot of players is that, there's a lot of people that are looking for storylines all over the place, and how they come up with them, hard to say. I'm not going to chop up any media colleagues or whatever, but certainly there's definitely a different element within media now, where there's some clickbait sort of things that are there, and maybe they don't take it always in a truthful direction. But I think when you start to deal with something like YouTube, players start to show who they are. And he felt he had been, kind of hard done by maybe the perception of what he was like, and he wanted to change that, and he has. And and here's the thing: whether you like him or not, you've got to respect his talent. You've got to respect his ability. I say got to. I mean, that's up to every individual whether they want or not. But certainly, you can't knock a player because they're a great player at their sport. There's lots of sports where you may not like to sit down for a glass of wine and dinner with a player, but you can expect you can respect their grit and how they play their sport. I think it just adds that hero anti-hero sort of thing, but it's hard to say who's the anti-hero now, just because we obviously saw how Bryson was engaging with the crowd during the Masters. People love him. We saw that U.S. Open at Pinehurst. They do love him as well. And as Rory is beloved. Some people don't like Rory. Some people, their perception is, because he was put in that position where he felt he needed to be a little bit more of a voice of the PGA Tour. His camera time was obviously amplified. Not everybody was going to agree with what he said all the time, but I think people still liked him, they respected him, and they know he's an immense talent. I will say personally, from a media side of it, I haven't had the opportunity to spend much time with Bryson. a couple of quick conversations, some Cobra related events and things like that. I find him a fascinating character just to have a discussion with. Having had the good fortune to interview Rory several times, to sit down in a room with him and have conversations. He's probably one of the most thoughtful players that are out there, and I would say Bryson would probably be in that vein as well. And the fact that when I say thoughtful, he actually thinks about the answers to the questions that you give him. Whereas a lot of times when you ask a question of a particular player, you'll get a 2-sentence answer. That's it. And I can remember a particular one with Rory where it was in Las Vegas, and we were given. It was an event where he was supposed to hit a bunch of golf balls. He had came in from Dubai, was heading to Australia. We had a lot of journalists that were there. It sort of got rained out, and the media handler said, "Hey, you get 5 minutes. There's a few of you. You get 5 minutes with Rory." And I'm in my mind, I'm scrambling, going, "Okay, I've got to come up with 10, 15 questions just in case." And I can remember I asked 3 questions. And in 5 minutes, as you know from a podcast here, you can get a lot of stuff in 5 minutes. And 3 questions was all it took, and he gave long, thoughtful answers. He paused before, as soon as I asked the question, you could tell he was thinking about his answer before he gave it. And I think that's who he is, and he'll give you an honest answer, which is fabulous. And for a player at that level to be unguarded, that's hard to do. It's hard to be in that vulnerable position because there's people that are looking to kind of knock you down here and there, which obviously is a position that both of them have been in. Compared to maybe Tiger over the years, very guarded in his answers or so forth. But I think having characters like Bryson and Rory kind of pushing along the game, whether they're playing on different sides or not, with the YouTube in the middle, I guess, as far as the reaching lots of different fans and reaching a whole new platform of golfers. It's fun when you hear a 7-year-old guy to say to you, "Oh, I watched that Break 50 series on YouTube." And I'm like, amazing, that's great. And there's more and more golfers now that are looking to alternative media sources for their entertainment. So I think it's great for the game, and I think they're going to have a continual rival for a long time to come, and I'm good with that. So yeah, long answer, sorry, but
yeah, no, it's great, Scott.
Yeah.
The other, speaking of media attention, did you see this thing on Rays Creek with Jose Luis Ballester?
Yes.
So for anyone who hadn't heard, he was caught taking a pee in Rays Creek.
Yeah.
I get the sense that this might have been buddies sitting around having a few beers and it being like, "I dare you."
It sounds like that, but I don't. I think it was. I think it was. I don't know.
Just a lapse of judgment in the moment.
Very, very much. I mean,
yeah.
I liked. I don't know if you saw my buddy Ryan French from Monday Q Info had a post, and he talked about. He's like, at Alpena Country Club, which is his golf course in Michigan. Fire away, right? Yes. And he sort of went down the list, and he's like, he got to the point of where it was like, Augusta National, I don't really think so. Augusta National during the Masters in Rays Creek, definitely not. like I mean, the world's attention, and in fact, just in the U.S. alone, they had 20 million people watch the final round. Canada was 1.2 million. So eyes of the world are on this event, and obviously he's a leading amateur. It's going to get out. It really
There's
is.
probably one worse place to do that, and that's during the Open Championship at the old course in St. Andrews,
sure,
off the bridge on 18, where it's wide open and everyone can see you.
Oh, yeah.
What are you thinking?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine, and especially when you consider, I mean, there are a lot of facilities around that golf course that that only players have access to, that the fans don't even know about. So I don't know exactly what all his circumstances were or why he couldn't have found someplace else beforehand. I know obviously I guess it's better to do that than maybe have an accident while you're on the green or something like that or whatever. But yeah, that's a kind of it will stick with him for a long time. Let's just say that.
Yes. Where's the bar for media passes to Augusta National? Have you had the privilege of being a media member there?
I have not actually. I've attended the Masters, but not as a media member. Normally, in most cases, it's swayed a lot towards the U.S. when you look at kind of regional publications and outlets and so forth. When you get to the international side, you've got to be usually covering at a national level. So either with a national broadcaster or a national publication, so you're providing the biggest reach possible. Yeah, so it's not one of those events where they're just going to rubber stamp everyone. And I'll say this now too, it's getting more and more difficult with all the events because there's more and more requests that people will have a consideration. They will call it, hey, I'm a media outlet. Um, okay, well, let's put some definition on that. And obviously a place like Augusta National has some definition on that. There's a lot of privileges that come with being a media member at events. Be it access, be it services that the clubs or the courses or everything is providing. So they want people to be at the most professional level when they're there. So they're going to weed out things as much as possible. And you've already got I've been at events where there's been 600 accredited media, and it's already difficult to handle that many. And for people to get access to resources, space in the media room and stuff like that. Augusta is obviously doing a bigger job of that with the big press building that they built there. But, they still want to make sure that the people there are doing proper work and coverage and so forth. And, as a result of it, they get to pick and choose, which is perfectly fine. I'm accepting of that.
So my follow-up question to that would have been, had you been there, were you in the media lottery to play on Monday? But since I now know that couldn't have been possible, what would you put your over-under on Monday, playing the day after from the tournament tees?
I can still get it around pretty good, and despite the fact I'm 55, I can still hit it a long way. I'd like to think I could break 80 from the tournament tees. I'd be fairly, I'd be fairly confident in that. For a number of reasons, but it's hard to know what's going to happen when you get out there and you're nervous or whatever. I've had a number of friends that have gotten through the media lottery. I think one of the most famous ones within our media group is Bob Weeks from TSN. It took him 19 times before he got to win the media lottery and got to play. And every year, everybody was just cheering for him. And then you've got other situations as well, like guys that will go down there and just or women as well, and just don't bring their clubs or don't bring rentals or don't even think of the option. And James Duthie from TSN, that was the case for him. The one time he got picked, and next thing you know, he was playing Augusta National with a bunch of top flight XLs. So not something you'd be particularly proud of, but who cares? You're getting to play, and you're getting to do that. So and by the way, you only get to play the member tees. You don't get to play the tournament tees when you go as a guest. And the member tees are remarkably different than the tournament tees. In fact, they're about 1,100 yards shorter. So that makes things much easier. Holes like 12, you're pretty much playing from the same distance, but it's not like you're stepping back over 500 yards on the 11th hole at the top of the hill and stuff like that. But yeah, over under from those ones, it's hard to say. I think you'd have some opportunities to make some birdies to make up for maybe your mistakes. I'd like to think maybe you could shoot 76ish maybe around from those tees. It's fairly short. So
those are good numbers. I'd be impressed to see it on a scorecard.
I would too. That's a best case scenario. Let's put it that way.
So, number one player in the world, Scottie Scheffler's got a unique follow through. I'm tapping into your coaching brain now.
Sure.
How do you coach players to find their identity in their golf swing and not to chase someone else's?
I think a lot of that has to do with proper evaluation. And I think, we're now in a modern time where, quality coaches are not looking at the aesthetics so much. We're actually looking at the functionality of a golf swing. So, we look at a player like Scottie Scheffler. When you start to examine that player through a different window than just, a camera or your eyes, when you start to look at 3D data, you start to look at, force play data of how, how they're using pressure in their feet and stuff like that. I think that's where you have to be smart enough to go beyond just the looks and the appearance. I know there's not a single player that I coach that looks the same. There's some that do a lot of things that are very similar, but you sort of have to dig under the hood and find out kind of what they're doing. And if you start to think about that, I mean, if a player like Jim Furyk or Scottie Scheffler showed up on your tee and, they're having success and they're, shooting 500 par or whatever, your job is not to change them. Your job is say, attaboy, and get going, and let's do more, and let's see what other pieces we can add rather than changing. And I think that's a big change in the coaching philosophy, because I know when I grew up, 1980s playing a lot of golf, it was like, all right, your swing has to look like this, or we're going to compare you to another player. And okay, pick it out, Jack Nicklaus at that point or whatever. And then eventually it became Tiger Woods. And, you'd see these golf coaches that are stacking their players up against them and trying to make them do those things. Well, everybody's body is different. And that's part of it as well. Physical assessment, knowing what the player is capable of doing, injuries in their background, flexibility, how they go about doing what they do. And I think you've got to basically preserve that DNA. Because in the end, that's the easier way forward for an athlete, is to do what they do best and they do well and they're comfortable with. And it's just shaping kind of all the skills around that for them to get the most out of it. So I think now, unfortunately, still television commentators, we still hear them discussing certain things about players that I would call maybe uneducated. They're saying it because they have to say it in a short period of time, and it's they only have a little bit of window to make a comment, and I feel for them that way. They're not going to sit there and break down and do a super geeky analysis of a golf swing, because they'll lose the room. But the reality now is we have the technology to kind of go beyond those looks and to really allow the player to be the best player they are in the way that they're going to do it.
Yeah, Brandel Chambly, quick take. I can say it, you can't.
Yeah. I had a discussion one night years ago, back and forth. I was one of the, I don't even know. I doubt I got blocked on Twitter with Brandel Chambly, but
what an honor that would be, though.
But it was just a basic discussion about something that was science-based, about forces. Like, seriously, it's just something that moves something. And really, it wasn't an opinion. It was clearly something that was going to be fact. And, he was trying to dispute the fact to basically steer it in his own direction. And I'm like, it's not my opinion, man. Like, go find Isaac Newton. You can argue with him. You know what I mean? So it's just like, okay. But yeah, you know what? We've got the opportunity to be better. So I'm always of the mind that, you've got to do as much as you can to be better. And it's not a case of being too scientific or too geeky or whatever. You've got to find the answers to make things better for everyone. And, if that takes a little bit more elbow grease and a little bit more reading and a little bit more knowledge, then, so be it.
As we lead into the Masters, sort of marks the very infancy of our golf season in the Kingston and Eastern Ontario area. As we lead into that, what's some advice that you would give our golfers as they get ready to start the season, whether it be from a practicing standpoint or just avoiding injury at the start of the season?
Yeah, I mean, you started first there with the injury standpoint. People have to realize that, we do have time over the winter times now to hit golf balls and stretch and do things. We have more opportunities than maybe we've ever had before. But for most people, if they haven't been hitting a golf ball all winter long, take care of your body first. Get into a proper routine where you can, stretch properly, make sure you're warmed up properly before you go out there. I mean, I see players every spring, and you've seen this as well, as they head to the tee, they haven't hit a golf ball all winter, and they reach into their bag for their driver and they're swinging all full out first thing, expecting great results. And it's like, man, this is a really, really hard movement, and it takes a lot of body parts to do it. And that golf ball is unforgiving, and we're putting a lot of force into our body. So take it easy at first. And I would say, focus very much on your short game. come out at the start of the year. I know it's exciting to get out there and hit that driver and, try to hit the golf ball as far as you can, but, tidy up that short game first, get used to being back on grass again. I know I got to play outside about a month ago. I was doing a travel trip down south and in Puerto Rico and getting on grass and getting used to being balanced. You're not on a flat mat that you are in an indoor simulator. So it's getting used to that. It's getting used to turf interaction, how that wedge head is working through the ground. It's getting used to your touch with your putting. So, practice a lot of putts early on, really simple stuff like, just putting through gates so that you can have some face control, striking the golf ball in the middle of the face with your putter, practicing, 20-footer back and forth. Don't be just trying to make putts, get used to your body again and how it calibrates towards golf and get used to your feels. And then have low expectations. Like I cringe every year when I go out early in the year. There's an event that I go to and I have a buddy that I normally play with, and I'm not going to throw him under the bus here, but he normally has a scorecard out and I know it's his first round of the year. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, evaluate in a different way. Like I always say to players, like, you know what, if you want to put something on a scorecard the first round of the year, put a smiley face or put an unhappy face or give yourself 1 star or a 2-star. Do something, anything but a score, which is too finite. It's just, it's too much pressure on you. And it just sets up really poor expectations for the rest of the year.
I just generally speaking with recreational golf, I feel like we're too focused on scorecards all the time. Yeah. Like, just go out and have fun. Yeah. For goodness sakes. Like, what does it matter?
I would probably say during a year, tournaments, obviously, but other times of the year, I can't even tell you how many times that I actually use a scorecard. Right. Like I just don't. I kind of know how I'm playing in my head or whatever and things like that, but it's just not. It's not that important to the experience. Right. And I think when you look at things like you have options like play match play, like double beats triple, you still won the hole, like that's perfectly fine. UK, they play a lot of Stableford where you're just chasing points and it's you're chasing points relative to your handicap. Again, it takes a different pressure off there, and we've even seen that within the the PGA of Ottawa. We're lucky enough to sponsor the Flagstick.com PGA of Ottawa tour, and the very first event of the year, the Spring Open, they went to a Stableford format a couple of years ago. In Stableford, if people are not aware, you get points based on what you do on the particular hole, but you're not going to lose points. So you can just play aggressive, and if you make a mistake, fine, you can just basically pick up and just kind of keep on trucking. You don't get any points, but you don't lose points. And in the end, it doesn't feel as bad as looking on the scoreboard and going, man, I shot 105. Right. And we're seeing the PGA of Canada nationally this year. They're moving their senior championship to a Stableford format. So, which is, again, it's kind of, it should be a lesson or should be, an indicator to the average golfer that's out there, like just grinding away. I know it's fun. I know you set goals related to that, and a lot of people do. But I think what people don't understand is that there's so much that goes into making that score happen. Some days, some days it doesn't roll into the pond on 11. And you do, make the par, sometimes things go your way. It doesn't mean you necessarily played great. It just means you scored well. And they're two different things. So it's easier just to maybe eliminate that and just go out and have fun with your friends. Like I said, play matches, do some things relative to what your friends are doing. You'd be less frustrated by the time you get to the 19th hole.
Golf should not be 4 hours of hating yourself.
No, exactly.
Masters traditions. What's your favorite Masters tradition, whether it's the Champions Dinner, the par 3 contest, green jacket? There's all sorts of stuff that's a little bit different about the Masters. What's your personal favorite Masters? Maybe it's something related to what you do for the Masters tournament.
The thing I like the most about the Masters, I talked about it. I did a little post this week. I wrote it up on Sunday, 5 things I like about the Masters before the final round started. So I wasn't going to be influenced by that. But, the tradition I still like is the fact there's no phones. That's important for a number of different factors. And it's not a case of being anti-technology. I use technology every 2 minutes of the day, it seems like, or whatever. But it changes the whole experience there, because there's a couple factors that come into play. One, people are not just there recording. As you see that now when you're at concerts and people just have their phone up, and are they enjoying the experience as it actually happening? So that people are more engaged because they don't have a phone in their hand, they clap. They've got that opportunity to clap. So you get to hear that claps and the roars. The other cool part is when you're on the grounds, you have to think about this. There are no TVs as far as big scoreboards that you see even in other PGA Tour events. Your only knowledge that you have of anything going on is the manual scoreboards that are out there. So you have to listen for the cheers and the roars, and you look up on the board to see those change, and it actually has an impact. So when they show those on TV on Sunday, when they post up the score of, Rory has just made a birdie on there, and you hear people roaring 18, it's genuine, because they don't know, they haven't been checking the internet every 2 minutes and knowing already that Rory's made that putt and there's nothing to be, excited about. So I think it just changes the whole atmosphere, and it doesn't have to be at every event, but for the Masters, that certainly makes it special. And I hope they never go away from that, because if they do, we're going to lose something as far as that excitement and that engagement when people are there.
And the players love it too. Like,
Yeah,
I think it was Rory that even mentioned it in his
he did, yeah,
in his interview after that. It's just different here because there's no phones.
Yeah, and you don't see that as much like the Open Championship, for an example. You do see it more now, but I would say the spectators are a little bit more engaged. They're watching the shots. They're more appreciative of the shots. And I love new people come to the game. I'm all for it. But I think back to we've got Quail Hollow coming up for the PGA. I remember being there in 2017 for the final round and watching that, and I swear maybe 10% of the people on the property knew actually what was going on. Most of them were there to tailgate and party and whatever, and didn't maybe have an appreciation for golf, didn't know if it was a good shot or a bad shot or otherwise. It lends a different element, and I'm not a golf snob, and you want to educate golfers and so forth. But, if you get somebody that's ready to jump into a pond excited because somebody's hit a golf ball to, 70 feet from 100 yards, it just changes the whole atmosphere while they're downing their 47th beer. So different situation.
Fan experiences, and fan and patron I'm using differently, as you'll see in a second here. Fan experiences that I've seen that have really improved the Masters is the Masters app, Masters Radio, the Masters official podcast. Their social media is incredible. And then that, I haven't ordered it yet, but the taste of the Masters, all those things, I think,
not available in Canada.
They don't deliver to Canada?
Don't deliver in Canada.
Oh, I haven't gone that far yet.
Yeah.
But all those experiences I found that the Masters does is just elevated from any other tournament.
Yeah, it definitely is. And, part of that is having the resources to be able to do that. I mean, when you're talking about the Masters and, how much they sell from a merchant or a merchandising standpoint, what they're able to garner for TV rights and things like that, they have an endless bucket to deal with that most tournaments don't have the luxury to do. So that allows them to invest in things. And they could have hung on to that money for themselves. Obviously, they don't need it, given the level of the members there and their wealth, but you look at something like that Masters app and being able to see every shot on the driving range and to get all the data. And I mean, I was going back and forth with a couple of friends, couple of coaches, and we're watching particular players and what they're doing and their shots and hitting it, round count as far as golf balls hit on the range. And it's the other aspect of as well too, where they've expanded out the tournament with the ANWA, the Augusta National Women's Amateur Tournament, the drive, chip and putt. Those are things, and I would say we'll see more. There are more initiatives that are coming by far, but you're right, that lends to that experience. I mean, it's not like people aren't geeked as it is to get ready for the Masters. It's sort of, not only is that first nail and first major of the year, for much of us in Canada and the northern part of the US, it's the start of the golf season. So we're already excited as it is, and they're just kind of feeding into that. So but yeah, they've done a fabulous job, and they've gone from being an organization that we're very guarded, You know, you could only get the back nine, was all you could watch back in the day. This is when I was a teenager, you know, probably black and white TV. You know, it was a very different experience than what we see now. And they've embraced that, which has been great because, you know, it only endears them to the fans and the patrons and everything. I wish accessibility to the tournament was easier, but unfortunately it's not. But they've provided access in other ways.
Yeah, that app where you can just click the player, click the hole, and see any shot that was hit.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Even the YouTube.
Right. Yeah.
Even the YouTube.
And it's a simple format on the app too to get where you're trying to go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a couple of clicks and away you go, and you get to see all the shots and you track them. You know, what they've done with their YouTube channel has been incredible. I mean, releasing all the final rounds a few years ago, so you can go back. And I know leading into the week, this week, you know, I watched a lot of the final rounds over again. I watched 86, 2015, 05, 19, you know, putting the recaps up there, whether it be press conferences or, you know, every round or every shot that a player plays. So, you know, I went back Saturday night. I was traveling on Saturday. So I was listening on the Masters radio, which again, another option, you know, and the Open Championship has a great job with that as well. So I was literally had an earpiece in while I'm driving and you know, listening. And then, you know, at night I flipped on YouTube, went to every shot that, you know, Rory hit that day, every shot that Bryson hit. And, you know, I got a synopsis of every single shot they hit, and I got to see it. So, you know, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Okay. So that was fan experiences. Now patron experiences. So when you're actually at the ground, you talked about this already, the no phones, but there's also the complimentary phones that you can pick up there. You can't text off them.
It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. But the complimentary phones down at Amen Corner, the concessions are unbelievable. How they, how smooth it is. It could be 1,000 people lining up. You're never more than 5 minutes in that line.
No, even the washrooms. I mean, you know, the experiences that you have there of how they kind of, you know, they have people that handle that and kind of get people through there as quickly as possible. Those phones are great because, you know, they've got a partnership with AT&T and especially the bank that's right by the picnic table area where you go in on one. And I don't know if you called anyone on that. And did they tell you what comes up?
It comes up Augusta National, does it not?
Yeah, it comes up the Masters now.
The Masters, okay.
It says the Masters. So so that's pretty cool. If you're sitting at home and all of a sudden you get this, you know, phone call and first off, it's always funny because you got to, you know, for some people, it's like you'd have to show them how to use that phone. They're like, what do I do with this thing? How do I dial this thing or whatever?
I was the youngest guy in my group, so I that wasn't necessary.
Okay, all right, but yeah, it's kind of neat. Again, it's those little touches and you know how they go so far. I mean, 2012, I remember being there on the Wednesday and they had a massive storm overnight and it was going to slow people getting into the grounds on the Wednesday. But it was such a massive storm though that it actually taken out an entire washroom, a building. The tree had collapsed and taken out they rebuilt that thing overnight. Rebuilt it overnight. Like it's wild, and I know I've talked to a gentleman who was he's a caddy at a couple other private clubs, but he also works on a grounds crew, like a landscaping crew in Augusta, Georgia. And his at the time when I was speaking with him, he was one of 4 companies that were kind of on call, and they would obviously drop of a hat. You know, they would go and take care of whatever Augusta needed to have done, and it's an attention to detail and that makes it great. And as you said, when those concessions, you know, not only the experience from how fast they get through, but the consistently the low prices, which obviously we don't see in major sports nowadays. I mean, you know, you go, you know, we're seeing different models show up here. Ryder Cup is going to have a ticket that includes food, but it's a $750 ticket. You know, obviously it's a lot of money to get into the Masters, but you know, if you do have that opportunity, you know, you're paying 1950s prices for food. It's hard to spend. I had a guy say that on Sunday. It's like we tried to spend $20 and it was hard to do it, which is kind of neat. And again, it lends to a different charm. Also the merchandising when you go to the you know, as you said, the lineups, you go there to the merchandising station store as it is. Everything's numbered, everything's very orderly. They have amazing staff. They get you through there. They have lockers available if you don't want to go back to your car, because you're allowed re-entry kind of one time, so you can take your stuff back to the car. But they have lockers that are available there, and you have to get there early if you want to get the gnomes. Right, no?
That's correct, Scott.
But again, they have it figured out. They have such an amazing team there, and that operation is definitely, I think it's proven to be an example for a lot of other sporting events to aspire to be like them. As I said, they don't always have that ability just because of financial restrictions, but it's certainly something to aspire to.
Yeah, they have their whole operation figured out. It's wild. I'm gonna finish this off with a couple rapid fires for you.
Sure.
Your all-time favorite Masters win of all time?
86 by far. Jack Nicklaus, he shoots 30 on the back nine with a bogey on 12. A whole bunch of other players kind of in the mix. And for me, it was, I was 16 years old. I was living on the West Coast. So I had the opportunity to go play golf afterwards. So he wins the Masters. You're all fired up. And then I got to go play some golf. So 86 sticks in my mind. So many good players that were in that mix. The age that he hadn't won a major in 6 years. He hadn't won a tournament in 2 years. For him to win that 6 green jacket like that and have such an amazing record, it's something that'll always stand in my mind. I probably watched it 50 times. No doubt. 50 times. So yeah, for sure, that one.
2019 is a good one for mine. Where was 04?
Where was 04? Yeah.
So those are the other two that really stand out in my mind. Most underrated hole at Augusta?
I think 3. I think people are having a greater appreciation for 3. It's only a 350-yard hole, which is very short in modern times. But that green has such a demand on players. I mean, it is, they can tuck the pins in such evil spots, and the players have to be so precise. And you saw even, Rory drives it up so close to the green, but as he said, it was very difficult to stop that ball near there. And I think I like golf holes that are puzzles and they don't rely just on length to be solved. And I think as a result of that, you can play it tons of different ways, but it demands skill. And I think as a result of it, and it's early in the round too. So a lot of people, again, they don't really think of it. It's just come after 2, which, a lot of people make birdie and often eagle. But I think 3 is kind of a critical one that can either kind of buoy your day along or it can, it can kind of put the pause on your round as well.
Yeah, the consideration there is how much spin probably do you want on that approach shot coming in, right? Yeah. And if you're too close to the green, are you actually making it harder?
Yeah, and if you think about, where those hole locations are, I mean, if you're over on the left, there's no depth to that green.
Right.
If you have that whole location on the left as they did on Sunday. So there's no easy way to play that one. So you're trying to force it down there as much as possible, but you're also trying to give yourself some place to land it. So, if you push it out to the right, at least you can kind of, flop it into a meatier part of the green and let it trickle down towards the hole. But even once you hit the green, there's just no guarantee. So I'm all good for a little bit of tricky. So what hole is it for you?
Oh, you see, I asked the questions.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm used to being on the other end. So, okay.
I hadn't thought about it. I'm not going to answer it.
Not a problem.
Best dressed golfer this year, and our Blazers are coming out in golf. Do you think we'll see more Blazers? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, of course I know what you're talking about. Worst dressed was Sergio wearing the Fireballs, Ronald McDonald, yellow and red. I don't know if you caught that early on in the week or whatever. He was wearing that stuff. It's hard to say. I mean, I was kind of surprised actually when Bryson and Rory were in blue, which is, I don't know. I don't always look at it as being the one that is confident or complimentary. I usually think of seeing players more in a pastel or something like that to match the green jacket as they come in there. I liked what Cam Smith did. I don't know. I didn't dig into it too much as far as his reasoning. I know he has a sponsor related to it as far as Grayson Clothiers and stuff like that.
So it was too many drinks one night
Okay.
with
Well,
the owner of the
that's
company.
that's usually the answer to a lot of things, isn't
Yeah.
it?
So for those that don't know what I'm talking about, Cam Smith warmed up in basically a suit blazer.
Yeah.
On the practice tee at Augusta National.
Yeah, and hey, and I'm all good for players looking as snazzy as possible. I didn't notice this year. Usually, you see a few more fancier shoes from players. I didn't see a lot of that this year. I didn't see a lot of kind of extra touches or things that way. So yeah, I'll have to say I didn't kind of watch that as close as they should, but definitely Cam Smith's stood out for the blazer. While not practical, yeah, it's cool. It got its attention.
Green jacket or a year of free Augusta National range time?
Ooh, I think I've done this one before. Actually, I got asked this one. Green jacket. Green jacket. I mean, it'd be great to have that practice facility, but the thing is, if you've earned the green jacket, you're now an honorary member, so you sort of get that as well. And I think the green jacket just would open up a lot of other doors. Now, I do have a green jacket though. I won one, not the green jacket. I won one for winning a golf tournament in Las Vegas. A friend just reminded me that we used to have a Ryder's Cup tournament in Las Vegas. And of course, Vegas style, it's green sequins all over this thing. And the rule is that you win it. They only made 5 of these things. And the rule is when you win it, the next year you have to wear it out with the previous winners. So all champions have to go out on the town in Las Vegas. And I think the rule is like a minimum of 3 casinos. And
but why wouldn't you?
You look like you're some like show
high roller
group. No, you do not look like a high roller. I think you look more like you're a lounge act. But you definitely end up with a lot of people taking pictures and asking for photos and stuff like that. So yeah, it's fun.
Was the guy in Vegas Vacation wearing a blazer that remember the fake ID guy in Vegas Vacation? Papa Giorgio. I think he was wearing a blazer.
I'm gonna have to look that up, but I think you're right.
You may have to look that up. Pimento cheese sandwich or egg salad?
No pimento. Stuff it's gross, man. It's like orange paste. It is such a you know what? People don't believe you. It's an acquired taste. You go and you're just like,
I was okay with it.
Were you?
I was.
Barbecue sandwich is the best one for me there by far. Egg salad, not a huge fan, but they do a killer job of it if you're into egg salad. They added the savory tomato pie this year, which I have questions about. That was my reaction. Have one friend who said he said, oh, it was kind of fire. I'm like, I don't know. I'll stick to my barbecue, thank you, or my Georgia peach ice cream sandwich. That's always a good one as well. So.
You know what's underrated there is the bread of that sandwich. It's always super soft and fresh.
Yeah.
All of them. Of them.
I know, but you can eat all of them. I didn't see the final tally for Bob Weeks, but he usually does a tally for the week. Last time I looked, he was at 12, and I think Graham Dillette was at like 7 or whatever. But it's not rare that Bob would eat at least 15 during a week there. So
he does. I don't know where he'd put them.
I don't know either. He's a twig and he runs. Yeah. Well, that's the thing though. He runs every day.
Oh, does he? Okay.
Yeah, and if you're on a media trip with Bob, it's kind of funny because I always joke. Like I got to go on a fair bit of media trips with him, and you'd have a breakfast and there'd be a buffet or whatever, and I'd be like loading up on like bacon and stuff like this, and he'd just like give me the hairy eyeball, and then every time it turns around now, I end up with yogurt and fruit, and I always like, thanks, Bob Weeks. I might tag him on a tweet or an Instagram or whatever. So, good man, and yeah, he runs all the time, so he takes care of that egg salad in a hurry.
Nice. Yeah. All right, Scott, thank you so much for doing this with me. Sorry, Danny couldn't make it, but we really appreciate it. I want to give you an opportunity to just tell everyone what you're up to, where you're hanging your hat this summer, and all the great things that you had going on this winter over at Celtic also.
Yeah, it's been a busy time. Obviously doing a lot of work with Flagstick. Everybody can check that out at flagstick.com. We have the Flagstick podcast as well. We've done 122 episodes of that now. So that's always fun, covering golf in Ontario, worldwide. lot of regional news and stuff as well. Coaching out at Smugglers, had some at Amherst as well. But Celtic Golf Centre this winter, indoor facility. Good friend Andy McWilliams built a great spot there. He also has another spot in Kempville, but built a nice teaching studio in there. So I've got everything from 3D to force plates to you name it. I've got all the toys. But just continuing to love this game and do as much as I can to make it better for everyone else.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Scott. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Masters Gnome.
Yes. Thanks to Scott MacLeod for joining us on the Pucks, Putts, and Properties podcast. Scott's amazing golf pro in our area, and I'm joined by another fellow realtor and former golf professional. Actually, the first person I ever met in Kingston, my first friend here in Kingston, Mr. Jay Gazeley. Thanks for jumping on and filling in for Danny this week as he's on vacation.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, pleasure to be here today.
Yeah,
in the podcast room. Thanks.
So we're not going to talk a lot about the Masters, but you and I were both down there last year, and thanks to our good friend Ken Thompson for bringing us along. We're going to shift it over to real estate now. Jay, tell us a little bit about your business and what's going on with you personally with your business right now.
For sure. Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Yeah. No, it's been it's interesting time for sure. We're seeing a lot of growth, a lot of listings growing in the marketplace, and so that's always exciting as you build listings and having discussions as well with sellers about the market dynamics where we are today versus a couple months ago, and the reasons for selling. That's important for them to understand. Market patterns have been changing, but yeah, it's good conversations with sellers. Buyers, exciting time working with buyers. There's certainly inventory and some nice choices for them as they move through the process.
Yeah, thinking back to like 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago, the market's totally flipped from where we were, peak of COVID market. We're listings heavy, trending towards a buyer's market now. There's tons of options for buyers out there, and really important for our sellers to present their home to the best of its level at an appropriate price right now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we always sort of when we look at numbers, and I love numbers, but are we balanced market, sellers market, buyers market, and really the magic there is when it's 40 to 60% of listings to new listings coming to the market and selling. Then we're in a nice balanced market, and back COVID days, it was above 60. It was really, 98%. It was sort of instantaneous type sales. Now we're under 40. So we're into a bit more of a buyer's market. So having those conversations with buyers, sellers, understanding the dynamics, giving some great value to our clients, is really how we navigate through the whole selling and buying process.
Yeah. Why don't you highlight a few of the listings that you have available right now?
For sure. Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, we've got, there's a few. We have 2 on one street in the city, Alum Avenue. It's just off Taylor Kidd and Sin Bay Ridge. One is just, a wonderful 3-bedroom, fully renovated family home, spectacular. And I'm
about to send that one to a buyer that I have today.
Yeah, it's a great one. So, I send it out soon because hopefully by the time this goes live, that one 753 Alum should be sold. As well in Alum, we have an interesting one. It's a ranch bungalow, but really unique in that it's been used as an Airbnb business for a number of years, and so it's got some great financials and is really set up as a turnkey business for somebody coming in. So those are great. Couple condos as well that are one across the road from Cataract Golf and Country Club, always popular, great demand in Thousand King. So it's the market is busy. Listings are growing. And it's, the right listings, at the right price, marketed correctly. Those are still selling. And so, understanding the dynamics to get to the end result we're looking for.
Yeah, I've got a couple on the go right now. 243 King Street East in Gananoque. Really interesting one because it's zoned commercially, but its use has been residential. So in this circumstance, it's in a progressive commercial zone, but its use historically has been residential. So it's been kind of interesting to go through that process in that it's been grandfathered in as residential. Currently working on an offer with it right now and trying to navigate the complexities with it, with the mortgage, how people qualify for a mortgage when the zoning is kind of, not for its intended use. It's been interesting ride there. I sold one out in Battersea last week it closed. That was an exclusive listing, which was an interesting one. Also, we ran into some problems there with water with the power outage. The sump pump stopped working, so had to get all the water out of there, replace the furnace, replace the hot water tank. Just so exclusive listing. When it goes to a firm sale, you think, oh my goodness, this was such a great sale. It's all done. Didn't even have to market it, put it out to the public. It's all wrapped up. And then here we are with the ice storm and the challenges of getting people in there to replace the furnace, the hot water tank, getting the water pumped out of there was also a challenge, and then getting it dried out, right? So
yeah, because
there's always something. I know people out there think that real estate agents, you see the for sale sign go up and then it goes sold, but there's so much in between those times, and even before that sign goes up, it's getting out in the public and meeting people and getting them to trust you with their most valuable asset, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, there's a lot of steps along the journey, and yeah, you can't predict ice storms. You get real settings, and generators and backups and insurance, and what people are buying, and that still needs to be the product when the final day comes for the closing. And so yeah, there's certainly as you're in the industry longer and longer, yeah, we all carry some interesting stories like that, and how we work towards helping our clients, right? And that's the the process. It's always sort of the main the main part of the process is really just to get our clients where they need to be, working with them, meeting them where they are, and getting to that ending that they're desiring. So yeah, good for you. That's a great story.
It honestly feels like I'm on chapter 3 of the book already, of the things that I've seen in real estate. We joke around the office, if something were to happen, it's likely Mark that has seen it already, right?
Yeah, the book of Mark. Yeah, certainly. It's
which I talked on the last podcast, those troubleshooting those things. I might be a bit of a sicko, but I enjoy finding the solutions to those problems. It really sucks when you run into a dead end with it, but oftentimes there's a solution, right?
For sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So what else have you seen in the market out there? How would you describe our current market?
Well, as I sort of mentioned initially, we have just sort of slid slightly into the buyer's market, and today, being April the 16th, Bank of Canada, they just held interest rates, so that's is a positive sort of holding factor for a lot of people. It sort of gives some sense that we have there's election, and there's some some tariff news and things that continue to circle around the market, and that's all part of it. But I think when you see obviously the Bank of Canada coming in and holding, that's a good indication that, right now everything is, it's holding. We're okay. Canada's in a, in a reasonable spot. And then for the homeowners, most of them, if they're selling, if they've bought, previous to the run up during COVID, they've got great, equity in their home, and there has been a little bit of a dip in the property values lately, but when they look in and what those returns have been, it's been amazing. And so if it's the time is right for them to move on to a different stage in their life, then let's understand the market dynamics and price accordingly, market to the right people, and we'll get to the right ending point.
Yeah, and I think something that's kind of within there is buyer opportunity too. As we do have a lot of listings out there, there's lots of product out there. You have lots of options where you wouldn't have had 3 years ago. And, there's some great buys that can be had out there too, because perhaps someone's struggling to sell and really needs to sell. There's different motivations from from sellers that buyers can, I don't want to use the word take advantage of, but get a good deal on a property.
Yeah, there's certainly, and that's all, it's all relative numbers, right? And so if we get feel like we get a little bit of a savings right now on a buy side, well, then a seller is now likely going into a buy scenario as well. So they're saving a little bit, on that side. So it works together. And yes, there is more product, more inventory on the market, which is nice as a buyer. They're not really feeling like they have to make a decision right that day. But, when you go and see a home with a buyer, if it's the right one, you want to have everything lined up so you can put an offer in sooner than later, because, it is nice to be able to put an offer in without being in competition. So when the right one comes, you still want to move forward quickly, and because you don't know who's going to go see that property, and it could be sold, that day. So if it is the right home, there is some speed required to get your offer in front of those sellers. So
yeah, and despite that, in our market, I offered on a property this past weekend where I was one of 4 offers, and we had the right price. However, there was a clean offer that won it. So you never know. Like there's still anomalies in our market right now where holding offers is the right strategy. I didn't think the property was underlisted either, and it somehow ended up in multiples. Just my luck, I guess.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, and without knowing all the details, location certainly is something that draws a lot of people in, and so there are certainly key neighborhoods that are always desirable, and regardless of market conditions. And I look at certain homes in certain areas, and sometimes we'll talk with banks and financing, and some homes, in certain neighborhoods, they will always sell for above the appraised value. And so the banks you need to understand that there are appraisals sometimes on them. If there is financing conditions, that neighborhood will always, overperform, and making sure that all the steps, essentially having good communication, having good people that you're working with your clients throughout. If you're working on the buy side, and having the right mortgage people working with them, there's all these steps along the way that are important. So, not surprised that, there are some out there that are happening in them, and there's reasons for them. Sometimes there's been price adjustments, and sometimes it's just, it's the right price, it's the right neighborhood, and it draws people in. The home has been looked after well. And so as sellers, we look at it. How do you make sure that your house is the one that people are going to get, excited to, and hopefully offer on? Is, the homes that are, drawing the interest right away are well maintained. The key ingredients of the home, if it's the furnaces, you mentioned your furnace out in Battersea, but the furnace and the roof, and just having sort of all those details taken care of, so buyers can go in with their best offer and not having to feel uncomfortable that, okay, there might be these things coming. And so the homes that are taken care of, well priced, properly in the marketplace, they're moving.
Yeah, and it's funny, the listing agent wasn't expecting this when she listed it, but by the amount of showings she got out of the gate, said, whoa, there's something up here. We've struck oil here.
Yeah.
Let's hold offers now. And amazing job by the listing agent representing that listing to identify that, make the shift, hold offers, and then get above list price. So even though I didn't get it, I'll give kudos to that listing agent.
Nice.
Yeah, we've got a lot of great agents here in Kingston. That's just another great job done by another great agent.
Good story. Good to hear.
Yeah. So this has been a golf heavy podcast. We both worked in the golf industry forever. I have 2 questions for you. Your best story in the golf industry, and I want your best Masters moment.
Well, okay, let's start with the best Masters moments, and really are 3 moments, and I would say, last year was spectacular. Great group of friends, and so many good moments. Some people bringing boats down, driving them down. Kind of not really a Masters moment, kind of a crazy, strange fisherman story, but good on that person that did that. That was certainly funny. But yeah, being there, I've been fortunate, been there twice for tournament rounds. Great practice round, went with my brother a number of years ago, and loved watching actually that year. Long story, too long for a podcast, but watching Adam Scott putt, and just some great moments, and Fred Couples trying to give advice to some young golfers that may not have been taking his advice. So it's the Masters is unlike any event, and just say that it's worthwhile. Find your way to get down there, and get it. If you haven't won the lottery, get down there. There's tickets available, and go see it once, because it is, if you're a golfer, you've got to be there. And yeah, so the best golf story, so many great moments. But when I look back, when I was at Angus Glen, we had a lot of tournaments and a lot of fun events, and Canadian Opens and various things, and skins games, and just a pleasure, everything about it. But probably the event. There's 2 events that really captured my interest in, and I'll just talk about one. It's called Golfapalooza, which was this incredible event that that the club started on a day we didn't have a charity event going, and so we were all kind of hockey guys, and so we picked Rose Cherry had a home for kids, and so we said, hey, let's run an event and raise some money for her charity, and so then bantering around different things, and the idea of golf pro-ams and things. So we made it a music pro-am amongst a number of us. Spain Arnold was our clubhouse manager, big driver of it anyways. And we all had some contacts in the music industry. And so it was just before the Junos one year. And so essentially every rock star, music star in Canada, from the Tragically Hip, Tom Cochrane, all the guys from Rush, was absolutely the most incredible musical experience that you could imagine, that all these Canadians were in one room. They played golf. It was all, they didn't really know who was coming. They just knew this event was happening, and they were in Toronto anyways. And anyway, so the night ends and everything's been a great time. And in the room, we've got the drum kit is set up. And so now we have essentially, you know, perhaps Canada's, I'm going to call it the best living room concert you could have ever seen in maybe North America, but I'll say in Canada anyways, is because it was incredible, from bare naked ladies to, you know, opera singers to, it was just beyond belief. And so, yeah, golf takes you in a lot of different travels. We've been fortunate. We've, you know, attended, you know, some cool events, and that one always takes me back that, you know, it was pre-cell phone. So sorry, there's no recordings of it. And maybe that made it even better, because you had everyone up playing and you know, all the bands, it was just almost like a high school jam session of people having a great time. And it was just pure enjoyment of music for all these rock stars. So that was, you know, kind of a fun event. Golfapalooza doesn't exist anymore, but it ran for a few years, and it was incredible, and good money raised for the Rose Cherry House.
Yeah, that's really neat, Jay. One good story that I also won't tell, but I will tell you, it's related to one of the guys in the Tragically Hip, where you and I both worked at the club in Kingston here. I'm not going to tell it, but if you ever see me out with a beer in my hand and you want to hear it, I will tell you. It reflects well on those guys, but I'm not going to tell it on here without their permission, of course. Thanks for stepping in for Danny this week while he was away. I had Masters Gnome here in the chair covering him throughout Scott's interview.
Glad the Gnome stepped up, and glad yours is out of the box, because this year's right now is selling for about $950 on Etsy if it's still in the box. I have a Gnome from 2023 or 2024. So we were there 2024. I still have mine still in the box. If anyone wants to know, that's 2 years. So it's probably up to $1,500 or $1,800 now for that one. So
what you're,
I'm glad to see yours out, because that actually increases the value of mine.
Yeah. But what you're failing to consider is that I have two. One still in the box. One was purchased for my mother. She took that one out of the box. So I have one for sale too. Got to bring me a good offer though. We had training about negotiation before we recorded this, so got to bring me a good offer.
Silence is key sometimes.
Yeah, thanks for doing this with me today, Jay.
All right, thanks, Mark.
Okay, that's episode 12, Puck Spots and Properties. I'm Mark Strand. He's Jay Gazeley. Danny Taylor's in the Dominican Republic. That's a wrap.